Have you ever reached a moment in your life when the answers you've been repeating for years suddenly stop making sense? You say the same phrases you were taught, defend ideas you barely remember the origins of, react on autopilot to situations you've never really examined, and still, something inside you feels unsettled. It's as if a quiet part of your mind has been trying to tell you that you're not living by your own convictions, you're living by the convictions that were placed inside you. And maybe that's the invisible pain you've been carrying. You don't think with your own mind, you think with the mind you were given. You just haven't questioned that yet. The truth is, most people live on autopilot. They believe what they've heard. Repeat what they learned. Assume something is true because everyone else says it is. And over time, life becomes a collection of second-hand opinions, inherited beliefs, and behaviors you never consciously chose. But there comes a moment, sometimes triggered by a simple conversation, a casual comment, or a single unexpected question, when the entire castle of certainties you thought were solid begins to shake. And that's where the story I want to tell you begins. Socrates, the man often described as unbeatable in debate, wasn't invincible because he knew everything. He was invincible because he knew how to ask. While the world tried to win arguments through shouting, ego, and stubbornness, he won through silence, curiosity, and logic. So let me ask you this. How many beliefs are you carrying today, without ever asking where they came from? Why do you think the way you do? Why do you react the way you react? Why do you defend ideas that might not even be yours? Have you ever stopped to question that? If you haven't, that explains a lot. It explains why you feel stuck. Why certain discussions drain you. Why some days feel like emotional déjà vu, the same loops, the same reactions, the same heaviness you can't quite name. But there is a solution. Simple. Powerful. Transformative. Learn to ask the right questions. Because when you learn how to question, not only does the world begin to change, you begin to change. What once felt like absolute truth starts to dissolve. Beliefs you held tightly begin to lose their grip. And everything that was buried beneath layers of borrowed convictions finally has room to emerge. In this video, I'm going to share with you the kinds of questions that expose illusions, dismantle mental traps, and reveal truths about yourself you've never considered. And if you're willing to look inward, really look, you may discover that the person you think you are, is only the beginning. Are you ready? Because transformation always begins with the first question you were never taught to ask. And if you want to keep uncovering the deeper layers of your mind, I invite you to join our community by subscribing. Let's grow together. Before we go deeper, if this kind of content speaks to you, if it feels like it touches a part of your mind you've ignored for too long, take a second to subscribe. Becoming part of this community is how you tell yourself, I'm ready to understand my own mind. Let's continue. When we talk about the silent pain of living with a mind you didn't choose, a mind built more by the world than by your own awareness, we're touching something psychology in the US often calls automatic identity formation. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Most of what you believe about yourself, about the world, about people, about what's right or wrong, didn't come from deep reflection. It came from layers of influence that shaped you long before you had the capacity to question anything. This is the first foundation of mental psychology. The mind is built before you learn how to think. And when I say you think with a mind you received, I'm not being poetic, that's neuroscience. During childhood and adolescence, your brain absorbs behaviors, values, fears, and interpretations as if they were absolute truth. Your mind is in download mode. You accept everything. Question nothing. And the brain, always trying to conserve energy, builds shortcuts to make life easier. These shortcuts become what neuroscientists in the US often call conditioned circuits. And those circuits run a huge part of your life today. This is why, when someone asks you a simple question like, "Why do you believe that?" you feel that strange discomfort. Not because the person is attacking you, but because the question hits a place where your mind doesn't have a conscious answer, only a reflex. And that leads us to the second foundation: the ego protects beliefs it never chose. Why? Because your brain confuses changing your mind with danger. To your nervous system, stability means safety. That's why deep questions often make you feel like the ground is shifting beneath your feet. They interrupt the script your brain spent years rehearsing. It's like your mind pauses and says, "Wait, this wasn't in the plan. I need to reevaluate everything." And it's in that reevaluation that transformation begins. But the third foundation is the one that truly changes everything. A single question can rewrite emotional memory. When you ask yourself, "How do I actually know this is true?" your mind is forced to revisit the origin of the belief. Sometimes that origin is absurdly fragile. Something someone said in anger, a fear you inherited, a misinterpretation you formed when you were too young to understand, or a wound you turned into a fact. And once you become conscious of the origin, its power disappears. This is what made the Socratic method so revolutionary, even today in American psychology and therapy. It activates the most advanced human faculty, metacognition, the ability to observe your own thoughts. At that moment, you stop living as someone programmed, and begin living as someone who chooses. Because here's something people rarely say out loud: the human mind doesn't fear the truth, it fears dismantling the old structure. And dismantling always begins the same way, with a question that feels both uncomfortable and liberating. But let's go even deeper. When we say your mind was shaped before you had a choice, we're also talking about the formation of psychological autopilot. This is something modern American neuroscience explains through the lens of cognitive efficiency. Your brain automates everything it can. Every repeated emotion becomes a reaction. Every repeated belief becomes truth. Every repeated fear becomes identity. And suddenly, your irritation isn't really yours. Your insecurity isn't yours. Your way of reacting under pressure isn't who you are. Even your ideas might not be yours. They are just circuits firing, trying to keep you consistent with who you were, not with who you could become. That's why certain questions hit you so deeply, because they expose the wiring beneath the personality. It's like someone turning the lights on inside a room you didn't even know existed. And here's the part that often shocks people: your mind isn't trying to sabotage you. It's trying to protect you with outdated information. It clings to what's familiar, even if what's familiar hurts. It resists what's new, even if what's new is better. That's why a single question, a simple moment of self-reflection, can destabilize your entire inner world. Because questions don't just challenge the surface. They challenge the foundation. And the moment you question the foundation, you begin to reclaim ownership of your mind. This is where real transformation starts, not by fighting your mind, but by understanding it. Not by bulldozing your beliefs, but by tracing them back to where they were formed. If you stay with me through this journey, you'll see something extraordinary happen. The mind that once controlled you begins to open, soften, and reveal itself. Everything you've struggled with, reactions, fears, insecurities, emotional loops, they all begin to make sense. And once they make sense, you can finally change them. Before we begin, if this journey is helping you see yourself more clearly, if it's giving names to things you felt but never been able to explain, please take a moment to comment and subscribe. It's a simple step, but it tells your mind, I'm ready to take control of my inner world. Let's continue. When we talk about the human mind as a landscape shaped by experience, we're talking about something psychologists and neuroscientists in the US call conditioned circuits, the invisible, automatic patterns that influence almost everything you do. They don't just affect your life. They drive your life. Imagine your mind as a city. In the beginning, it's nothing but open land. No streets, no buildings, no structures, just raw potential. Then something happens, a moment of fear, a moment of comfort, a lesson you didn't know you were learning, a phrase you heard over and over. A reaction you witnessed in the adults around you. And each one of those experiences carves a tiny trail into the soil. Repeat that trail enough times, and it becomes a path. Repeat the path, and it becomes a road. Repeat the road. And it becomes a highway, the route your brain chooses automatically because it's efficient. That's a conditioned circuit. And here's the part that's both terrifying and liberating. Most of those highways were built before you were even conscious enough to choose them. That's why. You get irritated without knowing why. You fear things that aren't actually dangerous. You repeat emotional patterns that keep hurting you. You believe ideas you never examined. You shut down, attack, flee, or freeze without understanding the trigger. It's not you. It's your circuitry. Modern psychology explains these circuits through three simple but brutal principles. 1. Anything repeated becomes automatic. If you grew up around criticism, your brain built a circuit for anticipating rejection. If you only received love when you performed perfectly, your mind built a circuit for perfectionism. If your childhood was unstable, your brain built a circuit for hypervigilance. And these patterns continue even when the environment changes. Your brain doesn't ask, is this good for me? It only thinks, this helped me survive once. Let's keep it. 2. The brain prefers the familiar over the healthy. This is one of the hardest truths to accept. Your mind would rather return to a destructive pattern that it understands than step into a healthy pattern it can't predict. In other words, this hurts, but at least I know how to survive it. That's why people return to the same emotional reactions, the same relational dynamics, the same internal conflicts, the same self-sabotaging loops, not because they're weak, but because the old circuit is comfortable, even if it's toxic. 3. The brain resists the new, even when the new is better. When someone asks you, why do you believe that, or how do you know that's true? The part that hurts isn't the question. It's the circuit trying to survive. It whispers, don't question this. Thinking is dangerous. Change is unsafe. And suddenly you feel irritation, confusion, defensiveness, the urge to shut down, the feeling of being lost for words, the panic of not having an answer. None of this is a flaw. None of this is a personality trait. None of this is who you are. It's just a circuit firing and trying to stay alive. But here's the most fascinating part, the part most people never learn. Every deep question is a direct strike at a conditioned circuit. It forces the brain to stop, reevaluate, and rebuild. American neuroscience calls this process memory reconsolidation. When you revisit an old pattern, recognize it no longer makes sense, and your brain begins to dismantle it. That's the moment people say, wow, I never thought about it like that, that explains everything, this suddenly makes sense now. It's not spiritual enlightenment. It's neuroplasticity, the brain rewiring itself. But here's the part even deeper than that, circuits don't break through force, they break through awareness. You can't bully your mind into changing. You can't scream your way out of conditioning. You can't demand transformation from patterns that were built in survival. But when you observe the pattern, when you understand its origin, when you bring consciousness to it, something extraordinary happens, the circuit loses power. The automatic becomes optional. The reaction becomes a choice. And that is the core difference between a conditioned mind and an awakened one. A conditioned mind reacts. An awakened mind notices before reacting. That tiny moment of noticing changes everything. If you change your conditioned circuits, you change your entire life. And you don't need to destroy anything to do that. You just need to start with the first question. That breaks the old pattern and creates space for a new truth. Before we continue, if this content has made you think in new ways about your mind and your behaviors, leave a comment and subscribe to our channel. It's a simple step, but it signals to yourself that you're ready to unlock the hidden layers of your unconscious mind. Let's continue. There's a territory inside the human mind that most people are afraid to explore, the realm of fantasies. And I'm not just talking about desires tied to physical attraction or romance. I'm talking about the entire symbolic universe that emerges when the conscious mind relaxes, and the unconscious finally has room to speak. Fantasies, in psychological terms, are messages encoded in imagery. They are the secret language of the psyche. They show you what you want, but also what you fear. They reveal what you've lost, but also what you are capable of becoming. And yet, these truths are rarely taught. Instead, many people grow up believing their fantasies are wrong, strange, or shouldn't exist. That belief doesn't come from their inner truth. It comes from social conditioning, from a culture that is uncomfortable with emotional depth, from the narratives of religion, family expectations, and unspoken societal rules. But here's the thing, fantasies are not dangerous. What's dangerous is never trying to understand what they are trying to show you. Carl Jung, one of the most influential psychologists, taught that the unconscious speaks in symbols, and symbols are never literal. A fantasy doesn't always point to something you want to act out. It points to something you want to integrate. Every image, every scenario, every feeling that arises within your inner world carries profound psychological meaning. Take a moment to think about it. A fantasy of power might indicate that you spent your life shrinking to please others, or you may feel you've never been allowed to express your true strength. A fantasy of surrender might point to the exhaustion of being forced to be strong, of carrying burdens you were never meant to carry. A fantasy of intensity may stem from emotions you were never allowed to express, emotions that were buried deep inside because they were considered too much. A fantasy of protection could stem from deep-seated wounds, old hurts that still crave safety and healing. None of these fantasies are about morality. They are about authenticity. Fantasies are mirrors. They reflect the emotional story that's been locked inside your unconscious mind. They show you what your conscious mind hasn't been ready to confront, but your soul has always known. When you allow yourself to look at these inner images with curiosity, instead of judgment, something extraordinary happens. You begin to integrate parts of yourself that were forgotten. Because the human mind fragments when repressed. But it becomes whole when understood. Imagine someone who has intense fantasies of freedom, of living without restrictions, of breaking free from old rules that no longer serve them. This doesn't mean they want to destroy their life. It means they've lived within tight emotional boundaries for far too long. The fantasy serves as a reminder, there's a part of you that has been suffocating. Or perhaps someone who fantasizes about being deeply desired, about feeling truly seen. This might not even be about romance. It could stem from years of feeling invisible, overlooked, or unworthy. The fantasy is a way for the unconscious to say, "You are worthy of love." Or someone who fantasizes about giving up control, about letting go of the need to always be responsible, to always have everything figured out. This could be someone who has spent years managing everything in their life, emotionally exhausted, and never allowed the space to simply be. The fantasy isn't the problem. The fantasy is a doorway. It leads you directly into the emotional truth you've been avoiding. Fantasies are not lies. They are invitations. They don't show who you should be. They show who you are underneath the layers of conditioning, fear, and self-protection. That's why, when you dive deep into your fantasies, you begin to understand what your unconscious is trying to tell you. It's not about acting on them. It's about integrating them into your understanding of who you truly are. And this is where Jungian psychology really opens up a whole new world for us. By acknowledging and understanding the deeper meanings in your fantasies, you begin to see where your inner conflicts lie. You start recognizing which parts of you need to be healed, which parts of you are ready to be expressed, and which parts have been silently waiting to be heard. This process isn't about rejecting or suppressing what's inside you. It's about integrating what was once hidden, so you can become more whole. When you understand your fantasies, you can see them as a guide, a roadmap to your true self. And when you allow that process to unfold, something truly amazing happens. You stop living from a place of reaction. You begin to live from a place of conscious choice. If this resonates with you, if you're beginning to see how these hidden truths could transform your life, consider subscribing to this channel. By doing so, you'll join a community that's committed to uncovering the deepest layers of self-awareness. Before proceeding, if the content is helping you understand yourself on a deeper level, please like and subscribe to the channel. Not for me, but as a small commitment to your own growth. Sometimes, the smallest decision becomes the first gateway to transformation. Let's continue. There is a moment in every psychological journey where you stop running from yourself and begin turning inward, not with fear, but with curiosity. And that moment is the beginning of integration. For your entire life, you've been taught to divide yourself. To separate the good feelings from the bad. To hide the parts of yourself that didn't feel acceptable. To pretend your wounds were gone just because you stopped mentioning them. To suppress desires, mute anger, bury sadness, shrink dreams, silence longing. But here's the truth, everything you repress doesn't disappear, it waits. It sits quietly in the unconscious, shaping your reactions, your choices, your relationships, your sense of identity. This hidden world, this buried emotional archive, becomes the architect of your life, influencing you from the shadows. And integration is the act of bringing light to those shadows, so they no longer have to control you. This is one of the core principles of Jungian psychology, deeply respected across American therapeutic traditions. You do not become whole by perfecting the light. You become whole by reclaiming what you abandoned in the dark. But integration is not an abstract idea. It's deeply practical. It is the process of welcoming back every part of yourself you were once taught to reject. Let's explore how that happens. 1. Integration begins with acknowledging your contradictions. You are not one thing. You never were. You are strength and fragility. Confidence and insecurity. Compassion and anger. Courage and fear. Desire and restraint. Order and chaos. The American cultural myth often says, be consistent. Be one thing. Be certain. But the human psyche was never designed to fit inside a single identity. You are a constellation, not a label. Integration is the moment you say, I can be both. And that simple statement softens years of inner conflict. 2. Integration requires understanding your emotional history. Every reaction you have today, every pattern, every fear, every moment of avoidance or intensity, has a story behind it. You didn't wake up one day and become anxious. You didn't suddenly become guarded, or reactive, or self-doubting. Something happened. Something shaped you. Something taught you that certain parts of you were too dangerous to express. Integration is not about blame. It's about clarity. When you understand the origin of your emotional circuits, you gain power over them. You stop seeing yourself as broken and start seeing yourself as conditioned, and conditioning can be rewired. And here's where American psychology is clear. The brain changes when the truth is finally acknowledged. 3. Integration demands sitting with what you avoided. This is the part most people turn away from. It's easy to reflect on your strengths. It's harder to sit with your fears. Harder to look at your envy, your anger, your resentment, your loneliness. Harder to say, this is part of me too, and it deserves to be understood. But every emotion you avoid becomes a shadow that controls you. Every wound you ignore becomes a pattern that repeats. Every truth you suppress becomes a weight you carry. Integration is self-liberation through honesty. It's the moment you stop performing for the world and finally listen to yourself. 4. Integration transforms your relationship with desire. In the earlier part of this journey, we talked about fantasies, the symbolic language of your unconscious. But integration is what allows you to understand those fantasies without being controlled by them. Desire becomes information, not shame. Longing becomes insight, not guilt. Intensity becomes a compass, not a threat. Suddenly, the things you feared inside yourself become the things that guide your growth. You no longer run from who you are, you walk toward it. 5. Integration gives you back your freedom. And here is where everything comes together. When you integrate your shadow, when you understand your unconscious patterns, when you reclaim the parts of yourself you abandoned long ago, your life begins to change from the inside out. You respond instead of react. You choose instead of repeat. You express instead of suppress. You connect instead of protect. You live instead of perform. The mind that once felt like a battlefield begins to feel like a home. Not because everything became perfect, but because everything became yours. This is the essence of psychological freedom. You stop being controlled by the parts of yourself you refuse to look at. You reclaim the inner territory that was once lost. And when that happens, something extraordinary emerges, a version of you that is not fragmented, not ashamed, not afraid, but whole. If you felt something shifting inside you during this series, if you've sensed a truth rising, a clarity forming, a deeper understanding awakening, consider subscribing. Not just to the channel, but to your own transformation. You're not at the end of a video. You're at the beginning of yourself. As we come to the end of this journey, I want to leave you with something simple, yet profoundly important. Everything you've discovered here was already inside you. Every insight, every moment of clarity, every realization that made your chest tighten or your breath deepen, none of that came from me. It came from the part of you that has been waiting to be heard. The part of you that knows the truth. The part of you that's tired of running. The part of you that's ready to integrate everything you've been taught to hide. If there's one thing you take from this video, let it be this. Your mind is not your enemy. It's your history. And history can be rewritten. You are allowed to change. You are allowed to evolve. You are allowed to outgrow the patterns that once protected you but no longer serve you. You are allowed to reclaim the pieces of yourself that were silenced, shamed, ignored, or misunderstood. And you are allowed to become whole again. Because wholeness isn't perfection. Wholeness is honesty. It's the courage to look inside and say, every part of me belongs here. Your shadow. Your light. Your fears. Your desires. Your wounds. Your wisdom. Your contradictions. All of them. This journey of integration is not quick. It's not easy. And it's not something you finish in one night. But with every question you're willing to ask, with every piece of truth you're willing to face, you step closer to the version of yourself you were always meant to be. And I want to thank you, sincerely, for walking through this with me. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your openness. Thank you for your willingness to explore the parts of yourself most people spend their entire lives avoiding. If this video helped you in any way, even if it was just one sentence, one insight, one moment of recognition, consider subscribing. Thank you for being here. Thank you for choosing awareness. Thank you for choosing yourself. I'll see you in the next video. Until then, take care of your mind. And let it become the place you finally call home.